Today I'm going over 12 sneaky starts for week 14. How this works is I go by matchup on the slate to see which players have the chance to go off and exceed expectations. These are not the players we're pegging to go off. These are players that are ancillary wide receivers, second string running backs that, given some extra opportunity or the dominoes fall their way, could exceed expectations and help us out in fantasy. This helps those fantasy gamers who are sliding in players into their lineup that are not likely to succeed. They're throwing in those players they don't want to start. They're just closing their eyes, hoping things go well. These are the players that you're probably looking at. But let's look at our first matchup. And the first matchup we're going to look at is the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have a 36.5 over-under here. Expected to be a low-scoring game. And we're going to look at the Baltimore Ravens side of things. And we're going to look at the wide receiver, Devin Duvernay. He racked up 99 yards last week. In his last 3 games, he saw 12 targets, and he's averaging 4 targets per game. What I like about him, he's explosive and gets you yards after the catch. He's got an 85.4% snap share in his last 4 games. He's running 36 routes per game, so he's on the field getting opportunities. Also, the Steelers are allowing 263 passing yards per game, so Devin Duvernay could be a sneaky play this week. Our next matchup that we're going to be looking at is the Cleveland Browns at the Cincinnati Bengals. We have a 47 over-under, so a higher scoring game by the implied point total. Tyler Boyd is the player we're going to go with here, and this one's a little chalky for the sneaky play videos that we usually do. But when we look at both these teams, we really know where the ball's going. We know which running backs are getting the ball. We know which wide receivers get funneled the targets. So looking at Tyler Boyd here in this matchup, he's seen 16 targets in his last 3 games. He's got 8 balls for 118 yards. Should be a slower paced game, but this could be an opportunity for a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 4 to get some extra opportunities. Moving on to our next matchup here that we're going to look at is the Houston Texans at the Dallas Cowboys. We got a 44 over under, and a lot of things changed since I started looking at this. Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks is going to be out of this game. Before, I had Chris Moore here as the sneaky start. It looks like he's a start for a lot of people, but look for him to get some opportunities here. Moore has seen 13 targets in his last 3 games. He's been the wide receiver 2 on the team per volume. Dallas is a rough pass defense to go against, but the volume could allow for some action here on the fantasy side. Our next matchup that we're going to look at today is the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Tennessee Titans. 41 over under, so a low implied point total here. And we're going to look at the tight end. And the tight end I want to look at here is Chigo Okonkwo. He saw 5 targets last week. Treylon Burks isn't playing. Had 43 yards after the catch last week as well. Runs a 4.5 at 243 pounds. 92nd size adjusted speed score. So look for Okonkwo to get some extra opportunities in this game. The next matchup I want to look at here is the Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. We got a 52 over under here. This is going to be a high scoring game. A lot of fantasy assets are going to have the chance to go off here. The player I want to look at here is Jameson Williams, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. Perfect storyline for him here against a divisional rival at home. Minnesota's giving up 276 yards per game through the air and also giving up a lot of yards through the deep ball. All it takes is a couple targets here. We know who's going to produce for Detroit. We know who's going to produce for Minnesota. So let's gamble here on Jameson Williams if you need to. The next matchup we're going to look here now, the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills. 43.5 over under. I could see this hitting the over. The player I want to concentrate on that a lot of people may not be starting is Corey Davis. I don't think he's going to be in a lot of starting lineups, mainly because a lot of people aren't concentrating on him. A lot of people are concentrating on like Garrett Wilson, and a lot of fantasy gamers are not in love with the Jets offense, but he's been limited in practice this week due to an illness. I want to keep track of that, but he saw 10 targets last week. He's been getting some volume here. He's a big part of the offense, and against the Bills, you know the Jets are going to have to push it downfield a little bit. The next game we're going to be looking at here is the Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants. Here we're looking at 45 over under, and the player I want to concentrate on is Daniel Bellinger of the New York Giants. Saw 5 targets in his return last week, 17.9% target share. Philly's a tough matchup, which could lead to some ancillary targets that could go his way. The next game I want to look at is the Kansas City Chiefs at the Denver Broncos. We got a 44 over under here. Let's get weird with this one. We know who's getting the ball in the Chiefs. We know who's getting the ball in the Broncos. Things ain't going to get too crazy here. But at the running back spot, since we haven't been talking about many running backs, let's look at Jerick McKinnon. He's got a 13.5% target share in his last 4 games, 17 targets. Denver allows 184 yards per game through the air. Could allow for some checkdowns. He does run a fair amount of routes per game, which could allow him to get you a 10 spot in fantasy. Moving to our next matchup here, the Carolina Panthers at the Seattle Seahawks, 44 over under. Player I want to look at here is Terrace Marshall. 9 targets in his last 2 games, 151 air yards. He's a deep threat. Seattle's allowing 234 passing yards per game. There could be an opportunity here where he can cash in on a couple deep balls. Next game we're looking at here could be ugly for fantasy, but fun to watch in real life. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the San Francisco 49ers, 37.5 over under. That's really low for an implied point total. The player I want to look at here is Jordan Mason, running back for the 49ers. I'm not expecting him to hit. I'm expecting Christian McCaffrey just to be the man, but he did rush 8 times last week and got 51 yards. We definitely know that San Francisco likes splitting up the workload a little bit. They don't want to overload Christian McCaffrey. So maybe through those rushing attempts, those touches that they give Mason, maybe he can get the opportunity to score some fantasy points. Moving on to another big game this week. It's the Miami Dolphins at the Chargers. Sunday night game, 51.5 over under. We're expecting a lot of points in this game. And here I want to look at an ancillary wide receiver for the Dolphins. We talked about him last week. He kind of hit. It's Trent Sherfield. Double-digit fantasy points in each of his last 2 games. 13 targets in his last 3 games. He has a 17% share of the passing air yards. He's a wide receiver 3 on an explosive offense. Chargers are allowing 233 passing yards per game. He could be a sneaky play for a fantasy lineups. The next game we're looking at here is the New England Patriots at the Arizona Cardinals, the Monday night game. And Greg Dortch is back. He's been practicing. He's been fully healthy. It looks like he's going to be good to go. The last game he played was in week 11. He saw 10 targets. New England's tough against the pass, which means they may use him as the outlet guy on those short dump-offs, those short pass attempts there, which could allow him to mount up some targets. We've seen him do this multiple times before. Greg Dortch could be a sneaky play this week for fantasy. But those are his sneaky starts for this week. Let me know in the comments, who is that player that you're starting that you're unsure about, but you got to start him anyway? I want to hear about it, but make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. It's only going to help you going forward. Waiver wire videos, stash videos, pickups, starts, sneaky starts, dynasty, NFL draft, rookie drafts, and everything else. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.